taking one small step instead of looking at the mountain. I'm taking one small step, it gets me closer to my goal. I'm taking one small step instead of looking, just sitting there looking at the mountain, yeah. Then it won't seem like I've got so far to go. I'm taking one small step instead of looking at the mountain. Taking one small step gets me closer to my goal. I'm taking one small step instead of looking at the mountain. Then it won't seem like I've got so far to go. And I got dreams filled with passion, yes. And I've got fears that seem to pop up in my way. But I've got power that's deep inside my soul. When I look too far and lose my way, always lets me know that I gotta take one small step instead of looking at the mountain. Taking one small step gets me closer to my goal. I'm taking one small step instead of looking at the mountain. Then it won't seem like I've got so far to go. Far to go. And I got off the track and I couldn't find my way back. When I looked inside, the truth there could not be denied. I was making it harder than it had to be, just pushing and fighting till I found the key. And know that I gotta take one small step instead of looking at the mountain. Taking one small step gets me closer to my goal. I'm taking one small step instead of looking at the mountain. Then it won't seem like I've got so far to go. Yeah. Taking one small step instead of looking at the mountain. I'm taking one small step, it gets me closer to my goal. I'm taking one small step just sitting there looking at the mountain, yeah, then it won't seem like I've got so far to go. I'm taking one small step instead of looking at the mountain. Taking one small step gets me closer to my goal. I'm taking one small step instead of looking at the mountain. Then it won't seem like I've got so far to go. Far to go. Now I got dreams filled with passion, yes, and I've got fears that seem to pop up in my way, but I've got power that's deep inside my soul. When I look too far and lose my way, always lets me know that I gotta take one small step instead of looking at the mountain. Taking one small step gets me closer to my goal. I'm taking one small step instead of looking at the mountain. Then it won't seem like I've got so far to go. Far to go. Now I got off the track and I couldn't find my way back. When I looked inside, the truth there could not be denied. I was making it harder than it had to be, just pushing and fighting till I found the key. And know that I gotta take one small step instead of looking at the mountain. Taking one small step gets me closer to my goal. I'm taking one small step instead of looking at the mountain. Then it won't seem like I've got so far to go. Far to go. Yeah. Taking one small step instead of looking at the mountain. I'm taking one small step, it gets me closer to my goal. I'm taking one small step instead of looking, just sitting there looking at the mountain, yeah, then it won't seem like I've got so far to go. to my goal. I'm taking one small step instead of looking at the mountain. Then it won't seem like I've got so far to go. Far to go. Now I got dreams filled with passion, yes, and I've got fears that seem to pop up in my way, but I've got power that's deep inside my soul. When I look too far and lose my way, always lets me know that I gotta take one small step instead of looking at the mountain. Taking one small step gets me closer to my goal. I'm taking one small step instead of looking at the mountain. Then it won't seem like I've got so far to go. Far to go. Now I got off the track and I couldn't find my way back. When I looked inside, the truth there could not be denied. I was making it harder than it had to be, just pushing and fighting till I found the key. And know that I gotta take one small step instead of looking at the mountain. Taking one small step gets me closer to my goal. I'm taking one small step instead of looking at the mountain. Then it won't seem like I've got so far to go. Yeah.
And welcome. Isn't that a fun song? I could say that that's my favorite, but honestly, there are so many favorites that I have that I'm not going to say that. And so, welcome to day 3. Day 3 is a day that, as I was on my journey, I had to figure out, wait, how does this mind-body thing actually work? Like, I know it's a saying and it's probably overused now, but how does it actually work? What influence does my mind and my thoughts have versus the biology? And being trained in conventional medicine, I had been taught that it was really all mind, all thoughts. And then as I started to go to some body-based trauma therapies, then the tendency is to be like, well, no, it's actually all the body. So I had to figure out, wait a second, like what is this connection? How do they actually work together or not work together? But if I am needing to figure out my path forward, I've got to figure out this interplay and this connection between the two of them. And so that's what today's talks are all about. Really excited for this today. Dr. Amit, I will share with you the highlights, what not to miss from his talk first. This is a 38-minute interview. And there are some key things that you want to pay attention to. At minute 8, he talks about negative neuroplasticity. Negative neuroplasticity is usually in association with thoughts or, I would say more thoughts or experiences. And yet actually what he starts to associate the negative neuroplasticity with is inflammation. That's a really important thing for you to know walking away. The role of inflammation and negative neuroplasticity. Minute 18, Dr. Amit goes into the specific emotions that most affect the liver and its ability to detox your body. So here again is this interplay between mind, emotions, and actual biology. What emotions get stored if we're not expressing them that actually affect the liver more than anything and affect the liver's ability to do its job of detoxing your body from everything from medications to our everyday toxins to oxidative stress. Then he goes into, and most of minute 20 to 30 is talking about this idea of what he uses specifically for the deepest level of liver detox. And yet again, for most people, they would look at that and be like, but that's something that's over in that category. That's not medical. And yet we're talking about the liver detoxification system. So I would want you to definitely know what are the most efficient tools for you to use for helping your liver on a cellular level be able to do its job of detox. Brendan Vermeire, 33-minute long interview. Actually was just connecting with him this morning. This is one of my favorite topics. Primed microglia. If you don't know what that is, you will know what that is at the end of this interview, and you need to know what that is. For those of you who have been through the brain health and trauma module with me, this will go into a deeper level of understanding of primed microglia and how there are some different testing options, because he connects it with things that we did not go over in my biology of trauma module. He connects it with CRP levels, or that C-reactive protein. And he even goes into what CRP levels, what C-reactive protein levels you want to see in your blood. So that if you're going to get test, and this would be even just conventional medicine testing, that's fine for the C-reactive protein, but what levels do you want to see, especially if you have a suspicion after this talk today that you may have primed microglia. So some really cool new stuff around brain inflammation and primed microglia. Jason Loken, Dr. Jason. I tried to cut his interview short and I still went 50 minutes long. And the discussion with him, we went into detail about the biochemical imbalances that most influence anxiety and depression. And so why anxiety and depression are on a rapid increase right now in our kids, but even us adults. In this interview, I do share my own biochemical profile, so you'll get to know a little bit more about me. But we go into more detail, again, a deeper level, what those of you who went through the biology of trauma modules with me this last year a deeper level of understanding on how to test methylation status. Methylation is one of those things that if you are here, you need to know your methylation status. It's one of the most important biochemical imbalances that I see in people who experience stress, burnout, overwhelm. And so your methylation status is something that you need to understand, and this talk will explain what that is, how to test it, and more or less where to go to get help with it. We end the talk on pyroluria and autoimmune conditions. And so this is a talk that if you have an autoimmune condition, or if there is someone in your life who has an autoimmune condition, if you work with people who have an autoimmune condition, this would be an essential piece in looking at the connection between pyroluria and autoimmune, and why everybody who has an autoimmune condition needs to get tested. And then we have Kirkland. Kirkland is a powerhouse woman. And I love what she goes into. So this is a 30-minute interview, and she goes into defining a word that has not been brought into trauma much, and it needs to be. She talks about the word homeostasis. I want you to write that one down, because that's going to be a key concept walking away from today. Homeostasis. And when we look at trauma through this angle of homeostasis, everything becomes clear. And we go into what trauma therapy centers, addiction rehabs are getting wrong. Because it's not until you implement this of what we talk about in this interview, does anybody have any chance for real sustainable healing and recovery. And I'm sure we can all remember a time or a place where we have seen someone that has not had that sustainable healing, right? It works for a time. It works while they're at the center. And we think that they're good. They've been there for a long time now. They're all fixed, right? And then they leave. And then they fall down again. So we're looking for sustainable healing and recovery for ourselves, definitely, for those in our life. And this is what you need to know in order to make sure that what you're doing or what they are doing is going to give you a chance for real sustainable healing and recovery. And we talk about, for those who have been through the stress hormone module with me, we talk in this interview about completing that stress response and its relationship with homeostasis. Dr. Diane and Dr. Miles. So this is an interview, fascinating. So we actually go into the trauma of being sick and having no real answers. Can anybody relate? It's traumatic. It's very traumatic, very overwhelming to be going to the people that you think should have the knowledge to be able to help you and give you answers, and they don't have answers. They don't have answers, or their answers are not helpful, which means that their solutions will not be helpful. And it is a very difficult, sometimes traumatic experience to go through. And then we talk about something that is one of the most important elements when we talk about the biology of trauma, especially around depression and anxiety. And that is this idea of neuroautoimmunity. Neuro, meaning the nervous system, autoimmunity. So your body has formed antibodies that actually attack your nervous system. Well, that's a problem. And many people have this, but they don't recognize it because it's not your typical autoimmune condition. And so we go into how would you recognize that you maybe have neuroautoimmunity? Because it's different. It looks different. It looks different. I mean, multiple sclerosis, coming from one of our talks yesterday, that is a form of neuroautoimmunity, but there are many other degrees, many other forms. Something that you definitely need to know about and ties into everything else, right? So it ties into the primed microglia, it ties into the brain inflammation. So all of these talks today are the really important things that you need to know about, especially when experiencing anxiety or depression and needing the full picture, the whole picture. We, in that interview with Dr. Diane and Dr. Miles, talking about the role that the mind plays in healing. And we need to know that. So it was a lovely way to wrap that all together, this idea of the mind and the body and how are they working together. If you have neuroautoimmunity and that's contributing to depression and anxiety, where does your mind, where does your thoughts play a role in any of that? If it's all biochemistry, we go into that. That's how we wrap up that interview. Beth O'Hara, 30-minute interview talking about Mast Cell Activation Syndrome. This is actually quite common. And again, one of these conditions that many people who have it don't know that they have it. And yet really drives reactivity. Emotional reactivity, chemical reactivity, food reactivity. So what sometimes people call triggers is actually mast cell activation, but they think they're having an emotional trigger. Or they are having an emotional trigger, and because they have the mast cell activation syndrome, it also activates their mast cells. And this interview brings in and ties up the conversation around methylation and histamine. So that if you're kind of walking away from Dr. Jason's interview, having heard these words of methylation, histamine, and still have some foggy areas, this will bring more depth to that interview. So if I had to give you an order, a recommended order for our talks today, I would start with Dr. Amit. He's a great energetic presence, and it'll be a good interview to get the energy going for the rest of the interviews. And then I would probably go to Dr. Jason, get the biochemical imbalances, then Brendan with the primed microglia, Beth O'Hara with the Mast Cell Activation Syndrome, then Dr. Diane and Miles with Neuroautoimmunity. And then I feel that Kirkland is gonna be the batter who comes in and hits the home run and brings everybody home. So I'm putting it last because it's going to tie everything else in the other interviews and give you that picture of, oh, this is how it all fits together. Yes, we were talking over here about brain inflammation and over here about mast cell activation. And this is how it all ties in together. So last, but not the one to miss at all. Tonight's experiential workshop, we get to do an experience of neuroaffective touch. and the healing power of touch. And so it's going to be an introduction to neuroaffective touch. We're going to lead some exercises and be able to show you that form, that style of somatic work. I'm very excited for that. And so with that, I will leave you be, let you go have fun today. As you're leaving, if you want to type into the chat what has been one favorite talk for you already this summit, and then my team will play some music, and we'll see you tonight at the Experiential workshop. And then if we want to enable the chat and let them type in the chat what their favorite talks have been so far.
One small step instead of looking at the mountain.
Every single one.
One small step, it gets me close.
Wasn't Betty great last night?
My goal.
Wow.
I'm taking one small step instead of looking, just sitting there looking at the mountain, yeah. Then it won't seem like I've got so far to go. I'm taking one small step instead of looking at the mountain. Taking one small step gets me closer to my goal. I'm taking one small step instead of looking at the mountain. Then it won't seem like I've got so far to go. Far to go. Now I got dreams filled with passion, yes, and I've got fears that seem to pop up in my way, but I've got power that's deep inside my soul. When I look too far and lose my way, always lets me know that I gotta take one small step instead of looking at the mountain. Taking one small step gets me closer to my goal. I'm taking one small step instead of looking at the mountain. Then it won't seem like I've got so far to go. Far to go. Now I got off the track and I couldn't find my way back. When I looked inside, the truth there could not be denied. I was making it harder than it had to be, just pushing and fighting till I found the key. And know that I gotta take one small step instead of looking at the mountain. Taking one small step gets me closer to my goal. I'm taking one small step instead of looking at the mountain. Then it won't seem like I've got so far to go. Yeah.
All right. Have a very, very wonderful rest of your day.